For our final race of the day, coming up for the Woods Services Porsche Club Motorsport Boxster Cup. We saw a good race from them earlier on, and it is the second fastest times rather than the results from race number one that give us the grid for this particular race. So it'll be interesting to see as to how things pan out in race number two. Race number one was won by Jonathan Lovell in the end, who secured victory by a fairly substantive margin. He was a little bit further up the road at one stage, but by the time they took the checkered flag, he was 2 3/4 seconds up the road from Vic Sedera, who finished in second position, and Mike Thompson, who finished runner-up in this category last year, finished third in the end. Tom Andrew got a poor start from the outside of the grid and never quite recovered. He dropped to sixth in the early stages, fought back to fourth, but it didn't quite happen for him. And Perry Darling, who finished fifth, sort of went off the boil a little bit and lost a little bit of time as the race wore on, but it is a warm day out there. Maybe the car setup might have been tweaked for this one. And Sarah Thompson completed the top six. We say it's second fastest times from qualifying that give us the grid for this one. Piers Pryor joins me in commentary. Warm day out there. I think the track temperature probably has already peaked and it's starting to get a little bit cooler, but it's still warm out there.
Yeah, actually the air temperature is actually not that warm anymore. It says the sun's gone down, but the track temp will still be, I reckon, retaining some of the heat from earlier on in the day, because the sun is still very much beaming on this beautiful April spring day. We had an interesting race earlier, didn't we, Mark, with the fact that the group for second, third, fourth, fifth, and then also first a little bit kind of kept ebbing and flowing, and at one point it was 3 for second place, and then it broke up, and then it was 3 for third place, and then the gap to the leader came down, and it was interesting. So I'm hoping for another close race like we had earlier on.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, it was sort of 4 for the lead, and then Jonathan Lovell broke away, and then Vic Sedera was holding everybody up, and then that brought third and fourth and fifth closer. They then squabbled, and Vic Sedera got back away. So yeah, it was a really intriguing race to watch. But Jonathan Lovell will be more than happy with that one, because he claimed a win earlier on today. That backs up the win that he took at Donington Park in round 2 of the championship, and he actually finished second in the opening round of the championship as well. So it's been a solid start to the season for the number 21 car of Jonathan Lovell. And his second fastest qualifying time also sees him start from pole position from this one. On second fastest times in qualifying, Pierce, he was 1.170 seconds quicker than anybody.
Oof, so one of the only drivers to get a very fast second lap in, which is impressive to do around a Brands GP circuit where every single lap you can kind of gain up to a second just with a bit of confidence. But yeah, and also even more impressive considering that he's only a novice as well.
Yeah. Yeah, albeit a very, very quick novice who at the end of probably the Anglesey weekend, it depends on how many signatures he's got on his licence. You need 6 signatures on your licence. But if he's a fresh novice for this season, then yeah, this will be the 4th race that he's in. By the time he gets to Anglesey, if he finishes those, they can peel that novice sticker off the back of the car. Yeah,
I know that there's. I don't know whether Jonathan Lovell is part of the same Lovell family as George Lovell, who's done a lot of karting, and then also I think it's Jim Lovell that does they call it the mini bikes or whatever. So if it is the same family,
mini moto.
Yes, that style thing. So I don't know. I'm just purely conjecture at the moment. But Lovell's not a particularly common surname.
Well done, because my knowledge was that's in excess of any knowledge that I had on.
Yeah, but I think it might just be a complete coincidence. Yeah. But I know that there's a motorsport family that I am aware of that have been very much involved in the sport, and I believe that family also are to do with the running of the South Coast karting circuit.
Shouldn't be long before we get the formation lap underway. You could just see in the background of the shot coming down the pit lane a few cars that managed to get tangled up in one of the previous races that we've had here at Brands Hatch, which caused I think 4 cars to go off and 3 of them in the gravel. You'll also might spot on this formation lap there's a big white line around the circuit where there was also what we think is diesel, because it was a diesel car race that was the one prior to this one that's deposited stuff around the circuit. So that's all been treated by the marshals, and the previous race was fine on it, so it shouldn't be that there's any slippery surface flags out there and displayed. While the cars are on their formation lap, weaving from side to side, very quickly we should be able to rattle you through the grid and the way that they line up, following what was the second fastest times from qualifying earlier on. It's not race results from race number 1, it's second fastest times from qualifying that give us the grid for this one. And the way that they line up is that Jonathan Lovell starts from pole position, and Tom Andrew, who didn't get off the start well last time, lines up alongside once more. Row 2 of the grid is Perry Darling and Vic Sedera, who finished second in the race earlier on at the wheel of the number 66 car. Row 3 of the grid is Mike Thompson alongside Sarah Thompson, which shouldn't have a P but does on our timing screens. The next row of the grid sees number 55, which is Scott Adams, lining up alongside the number 20 car, and Hansa Fane Oval Evans. And then as we move on to row 5 of the grid, it's going to be Ashley White, who has got for company, the purple and green machine, which is Eric Bridges. The 6th row of the grid, on the inside it's Paul Watson, and he has got to his other side Jessica Wilkinson, who lines up in 12th position on the grid. And then the final row of the grid should see Zoe Kyle-Henney line up alongside Sarah Wood. That will be the final row of the grid. We did have Simon Ruffle-Ward qualify, but his car only did 3 laps in qualifying. It prevented him, whatever the issue was, from competing in race number 1. He's also not entered in race number 2. So 14 cars going in this one.
Decent grid, of course, with this spec series where all the cars are prepared by the same team. They're all exactly this same car with the same engine, and it produces very... Oh no, hang on, I'm completely getting mixed up here. There's different cars, aren't they? No, they're all Porsche Boxsters. They're all Porsche Boxsters. My brain gets completely confused there. They're all Porsche Boxsters. It's very warm in this console. It's all Porsche Boxsters, of course, prepared by separate teams if you want to. You could do it yourself or a certain team, but they're all very, very similar in performance. Yep,
so they all produce, either 350 or 370 is the weight, but that is based on whether it's one of the earlier model Porsches. They're all the 3.2 litre Boxster S, so the earlier 1999, 2000 through to 2002 spec car run a slightly lighter weight because they have less power. The 2003, 2004 model years run 20 kilos heavier because they've got a little bit more power, but it equates that power to weight ratio for them in reality, and it does mean that you actually don't know, you almost don't know what is what model because they all run together.
Yeah, which is great. It means that it doesn't matter if you've got a slightly older or slightly newer car, and also gives a bigger spread of cars for you to have a competitive race in, so potentially also means that you can pick up a car quite cheap, and there are some, as you mentioned earlier on, for sale.
Well, this all started as a few years ago. It was called Retro Racing Porsche category, and what it did was it encouraged Porsche dealers to build the car and race it in the series, which was a series at the time, and they all had to be painted in a livery that harked back to a Porsche that raced back in period. It didn't matter whether it's Group C or prior, but it was wonderful to see. We had pink pigs out there, we had ones that looked like a certain cigarette brand which were very successful at Le Mans with the 956 and so on, so 962s, but yeah, it was good to see though. Shame we don't have any of those retro liveries on the grid really for this weekend.
Yeah, apart from we got a sort of a hark to the, or a sort of a homage to the official Porsche livery in fifth place there, with the white top and the red line running around,
and Ashley White's as well, number 46 car, sort of harks back to one of the liveries as well. But before, they all used to have to run some sort of period livery. Yes, there's a number 46 car there which harks back to a Porsche livery as well.
Yeah, and as soon as you said the pink pigs, I'm sure a lot of motorsport fans will know exactly what you're talking about.
Absolutely,
I love that livery with the little sort of the black spots going, or the black hash line.
Was it the 917?
Can't remember. And of course, then they did the special liveries for the Le Mans that year. That there was 3 Porsches in an LMP1, didn't they? Where they had the white one, a pink one, and a black one. I can't remember. But anyway, that was cool.
No, but so and it's gone from strength to strength really now. We now get to the stage where we have these separate races for them because there isn't the ability to accommodate the grid for this on the other championship that Porsche Club GB run. So it's a separate grid now for the Boxster Cup for most of the rounds. I think at Silverstone, because we can accommodate more on the grid, they'll pitch them all together. So everybody lining up on the grid in terms of the colours. Well, it's sort of silver and martini-esque livery for Jonathan Lovell on pole position. It's sort of a light green and grey for Tom Andrew sitting alongside. Dark blue, largely for Perry Darling, alongside the white and purple car of Vic Sedera. But we're about to get race number 2 underway. A 20-minute race it will be, slightly shorter than initially anticipated because of the tight timescales we've got at Brands. Race gets underway, and it looks as though both front row men are matching each other for pace. Vic Sedera looking to try and squeeze his way around the outside of Perry Darling if he can.
And that's a big spin for the number 20, just going across the nose of. I didn't catch which car it was because they just didn't see that. But also Perry Darling from the second, was it front row, the second row of the grid, had a lot of wheel spin, which is why he lost out initially. But seems to have held on to his positions so far around the second corner.
Yeah, the car that has stopped off the grid is Faye Noble-Evans, who hasn't got going as yet. So the race still continues as the cars dive their way down in towards Graham Hill Bend for the first time. And you can see the lead pair have disappeared up the road from Perry Darling, who is very much the cork in the bottle in the early stages for this one. Mike Thompson is right behind him, then Vic Sedera, then the number 46 car of Ashley White, who's had a really good run actually, because he started 9th and is going to be inside the top 6 at the moment. Eric Bridges, I think, is there in 7th place, but for poor old Faye Noble-Evans, her car came to a halt at Paddock Hill Bend, and is still stationary where it stopped.
Safety car is out. We can see the boards on the right-hand side of shot there. So double wave yellows and the safety car boards are out because that car is most certainly stops in a dangerous position sideways, going into Paddock Hill Bend, slightly unsighted as you come over the start-finish line. Hopefully that's just a case of tow it out and send it on its way, which means we can get most of this race underway once again.
Yeah, love the livery of that car, actually. Fantastic looking livery.
It's very unique, isn't it? It's got almost, you can tell that it's been wrapped because it's got all the intricate details. It's almost like a, what do they call it? No, not Cinco de Mayo. What's the Day of the Dead?
Yeah, Day of the Dead.
I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, I don't speak any languages other than English, so barely even that. But yes, very cool. And also, we've mentioned the liveries. They all look very cool in their own way. We've got some historic liveries, or ones that sort of remind you of old liveries gone by. You've also got some very much unique liveries for the drivers who are showing off their own personal flair and taste as well, which is, that's part of the attraction of this championship. And of course, the championship, as you mentioned before, sort of reward that.
They do, yeah. So the way that it works is, you get the points depending on where you finish in the race results. You get an extra point for pole position, extra point for fastest lap. You get an extra point if you put in your entry form and pay before the closing date, which is a commentator's nightmare because you never know when people put their entry in, so you don't know whether they're eligible for that point or not. And if it comes down to a point at the end of the season, it's a proper head-scratching one, that one.
I bet that's great for the admin team, though.
Yeah, it is. You also get some extra points depending on the number of starters in your class as well, so that also affects it. But what you're alluding to is further point is awarded to each competitor who at the time of starting the meeting displays no damage to his or her car. That fact is determined by the championship scrutineer or his appointed deputy. That's word for word out of the regulations.
I thought you'd memorised that, Mark.
No. I was reading it.
Oh, no, you weren't. You're straight from the brain. But yeah, it's great to see that there's almost an incentive to bring these cars up to tip-top standard as much as possible and as much as within budget for every round, because, we want a good-looking and pristine set of cars on the grid. Of course, sometimes, a lot of the drivers are running to budget, and if there's a scuff on the bumper and you haven't got the time or funds to fix it, but you'd rather go racing, we'd rather see the cars out there than having to be paid. But it's also great that people take pride in these, what are quite classic cars nowadays. They're quite sought after in a lot of ways. They
are, yeah. I mean, what's happened with generally Porsches over the years is that you end up with a series that is hugely popular because that particular car has come to the end of its production run and maybe it's depreciated in value to the point that it's an affordable car to pick up, convert into a race car and go and race. But then you get to the point with typical Porsches is that depreciation stops and you start to get appreciation in the values, and all of a sudden a car that used to be converted for racing, no longer do people want to do it. So the likes of the 996s now, they're getting ever more expensive, and why would you want to convert one of those into a race car at the moment when you've got things like Caymans that are far cheaper to and easier to get hold of? So you do end up with this. It's quite a strange cycle, and Porsche is quite unique, I think, in terms of as a manufacturer that happens, really.
Yeah, I mean, even similar sort of brands that you think are quite desirable brands, like even like a Ferrari, for example, they do, after a long time, and specific ones go up in value quite a lot, but a lot of them, as you say, they're very expensive, and then they kind of go down, but they don't have quite the secondary kick up in value.
Which Porsche do, yeah. So there is, on the end of a tow rope, Faye Noble-Evans working the way on the back of that tow rope back into the pit lane area, which should mean that the safety car might be in at the end of this lap. Now, the safety car is out on the Grand Prix circuit somewhere at the moment. It is only part of the way round the Grand Prix circuit, just heading through Hawthorne Bend currently. So that is surely going to mean that now the track is clear, we should be able to get racing back underway at the end of this lap, which is a good thing because already the race that was scheduled to be 25 minutes has been subtly reduced to 20 because here at Brands Hatch we have to have all racing completed by 6:30, and we still have a further race to come, one of the supporting races here, that's scheduled to be half an hour after this one, so we've got very little time to get through all of the racings. That was why this particular race has been shortened by 5 minutes to enable us to get through all the rest of the programme here today.
Yes. It looks like we hopefully should be going green this time. I'm sure the safety car lights will be going out imminently, which dictates to the drivers that the safety car is coming in this lap and allows the leader to take the place of the safety car, choosing the speed, and then they can also choose at what point they would like to go racing as well.
Yep, so it's up to Jonathan Lovell as to when he wants to press that accelerator. The electric BMW safety car is going to accelerate its way in towards the pit lane area, and Jonathan Lovell decides to go for it now by the look of things. Yep, so off he goes. Tom Andrew with not a bad restart. Perry Darling is a little bit slower away. There's no overtaking until they get to the start-finish line. You can be alongside, but you can't have your nose ahead by the time you get to the start-finish line. And actually, for a restart, that's a reasonably strung-out restart, I would say. So they come over the start-finish line. Nobody really in a position to attack anybody else.
No, I was about to say exactly the same thing, Mark. It was almost sort of the closest gap is probably about half a second between anyone. So everyone clearly just fancying a very fast drive through the Kent countryside hills. But I'm sure the race will hot up as we get on for the race, because it's still very warm out there. Maybe they didn't realise that the safety car lights are going to go out that time around. Yeah, possibly.
One of the best battles we've got at the moment is for third and fourth place, which is Perry Darling under pressure from Mike Thompson. Can the car of Mike Thompson squeeze his way through? He's trying up the inside as they head in towards Surtees, but Perry Darling has got that one covered off. And now just needs to be careful he doesn't run wide coming out of the corner, which is always a danger there. So no, order remains the same as they head onto the Grand Prix circuit. Yeah,
it looks like there was almost unsighted there on the outside is the kind of fourth place in that lovely white and black and red car. It sort of looked around the outside, and then kind of the door got shut, and then you couldn't switch back to the inside by the start of Surtees. But no, they're back closing up once again, all the way through the field. In fact, it's almost 2 by 2 now, isn't it, really?
Yeah, they all seem to have paired off. Vic Sedair is under pressure from the number 46 car of Ashley White, just further back in the background. And then we've got the purple and light green car of Eric Bridges, who is fighting away with the yellow and red car, number 19, hands of Sarah Thompson. So everybody seems to have found a partner to play with at the moment. And for the lead of the race, it is Jonathan Lovell under pressure for Tom Andrew.
Yes, Tom Andrew looking very racy. He wants to get the lead back and stop Lovell taking a clean sweep on this championship for this round, or this visit to Brands Hatch GP circuit. You can see them still trying to avoid that line of what was fluid and is now dust around the circuit, because they don't want anything to unsettle their car.
Yep, so 12 minutes of the subtly reduced 20 minutes that were rescheduled still to go. And as they start to descend downhill at the bottom of Paddock Hill Bend, then very quickly it climbs uphill towards Druids, but the order still remains the same. Race 1 winner, Jonathan Lovell, already with 2 wins this season under his belt of the 3 races that we've had. This is the 4th of the season, leading the way at the moment. The only other driver that's claimed a win sitting behind him on the road, which is Tom Andrew, who won the first race of the season, round 1 of the championship at Donington Park. So these two have largely been the class of the field all season. We saw them having a great battle at Donington Park. They didn't quite have the battle we were hoping for in race number 1 because of that poor start from Tom Andrew. He never really recovered from, but whatever it is, he's found the pace in race number 2.
And again, this is around the back of the circuit, around this section. Is now, as you can see, the circuit is being covered by trees, so potentially the track temperature dropping quite quickly around the back, and that might be suiting either the setup or the driving or the tyre pressures or whatever of the second place Andrew car, as opposed to Lovell, who actually we saw earlier on, didn't he? He was rapid at the start of the race, and then just pace dropped away towards the end, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't drop off like a stone, but there was certainly a significant... His car dropped off significantly more than anybody else that was running in the top 3, 4, 5 places. So, yeah, they either need to be careful of that in this race because he doesn't have the lead advantage to play with, or, as we suggested earlier on, they might have just tweaked something on the setup of the car to make sure that maybe it might not be quite as strong at the beginning, but it stays on towards the end.
Yeah, it's all about your overall race time generally, isn't it? You want to get from the start line to the finish flag as quickly as possible. Your fastest lap is ultimately fairly irrelevant in the terms of the race position, because you could have a fast lap if your fastest lap is on lap 1 and then you're 3 seconds lap slower by the end of the race. That's not going to lend itself to results and a championship fight by the end of the year. But Lovell managing to maintain the gap just for now at half a second, which is about the border at which it becomes comfortable or uncomfortable really. Any closer and he'll start to think about potentially covering off a dive bomb.
Here we go, as Sarah Thompson is able to dive her way through and past Eric Bridges, so that's position gain there for Sarah. You can see some scuffs down the side of her car following what was some close racing earlier on. We did have a new fastest lap of the race for the race leader last time through as well, wasn't it? 145.182. That is now half a second quicker than the fastest lap from race 1 that we had earlier.
Wow, so this whole grid is getting faster and faster with every lap they do, potentially the circuit rubbering in as well, because of course the GP loop doesn't get used a huge amount, so every lap of every race more rubber goes down on the racing line. Yeah,
ambient temperature and air temperature probably affecting that as well, because it was very warm for their race earlier on, wasn't it?
It's just starting to cool down now a little bit, so the cooler the air and the cooler the track. Cooler the air means that you've got a bit more air in the engine, because it's denser, therefore you've got a bit more power. And the core of the track, these treaded tyres, aren't they? Just slightly grooved tyres. They will tend to overheat, so cooler track temperature will be more favourable.
Yep, so pushing hard for the lead of the race is Jonathan Lovell. If anything, it looks as though the lead gap might just have come out a little bit. Yeah, it came out by 1/10 of a second through the first sector. It's come out by a further 3/10 of a second through the second sector of the lap. Perry Darling still hanging on to third place, despite the very best efforts of Mike Thompson, who is closing, ever closing, and might offer himself up half an opportunity. I don't think here at Clearways and Clark Corner, but a good drive off this corner and up towards Paddock Hill Bend. That offers him an opportunity for sure.
Definitely Paddock Hill is one of the main overtaking opportunities here at the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, and it's that last section of the lap has definitely been strong for Thompson. As we're looking up the inside of Paddock Hill Bend, not this time, says Darling, just slightly closing the door, saying no, you don't come through this time, you're going to have to try a bit harder than that or get closer. But definitely a bit more pace in that number 6 white and black car as we go deep now into Druid's Corner for the 81 of Darling, which then allows the number 6 to go through with Thompson, so that is third place taken.
Yeah, he just outbraked himself a little bit, didn't he there, Perry Darling, and therefore straight away able to get the car rotating, get the undercut before they even got to the apex was Mike Thompson there. So good stuff that from the man who was runner-up in this championship last year. However, Perry Darling now tried to fight back as they head up towards Surtees Corner. Mike Thompson wasn't quite sure whether he could close the door, left a bit of margin there, but now for the lead of the race, Tom Andrew has prized the door open, looking for the inside line at Hawthorn. Can't quite take the lead of the race away from Jonathan Lovell.
Jonathan Lovell going almost all the way down to the white line to protect that place. He wants to get a double win because that would be an amazing victory for both races to show the consistency of pace. I mean, we know he's got great pace on his own because we saw pole in qualifying and second fastest lap in qualifying, which gave him pole for this race. But at the moment, the tides of pace are sort of leaning in Andrew's favour.
Yeah, I think, am I not right, but Jonathan Lovell has led every racing lap that we've had so far.
This weekend or total?
This weekend.
Oh, yeah, this weekend it's led every single lap, so Andrew will be doing all he can to try and at least force a gap and just create a mistake, because so far he's been pretty imperious Lovell at the front, not making any mistakes.
Yeah, just look at the gap that they've got. So they've already gone through shot, and not as yet have we even seen the cars in second and third arrive into shot by the look of things. So there is Jessica Wilkinson. You can see the novice cross on the back of her car. She sits there in 9th position. Back to what is the fight for second and third over the start-finish line. Mike Thompson in his newly acquired third position. Perry Darling, is he going to try anything at Paddock Hill Bend? The door is open. He's going to try and stick his nose up it, but that was quite late to try and make that move. They just got away with it. Order remains the same. Yeah,
that would have been a late manoeuvre to go into Paddock Hill, because as much as the apex of the corner is quite a long way around, you start the corner and your car is loaded up and you're committed to the corner quite early because the circuit leans in. It's always turning. It's not really a straight part of circuit leading up to Paddock Hill. So if someone just throws their nose up the inside just before the apex, it's very, very hard not to make a mistake. If you see some battling down the field.
Yeah, that's Vic Sedera, who's coming under pressure from Sarah Thompson, who wants to pick up a further place here. So this will be for 6th and 7th position. Now, Vic Sedera in the number 66 car, remember, was second earlier on today. Well, his pace seems to have gone the opposite way, whereas Sarah Thompson, who qualified 6th, finished 6th earlier on today, but she did sort of drop down to 8th. All of a sudden seems to have found a little bit more. She's pushing hard now. She might be there. Don't quite think she's going to do it by Hawthorn, but with 5.5 minutes to go, there's half a chance.
Yeah, it's great showing as well, because Sedera was second in the previous race and had the pace to do so. It wasn't by chance. So the number 90 car there of Sarah Thompson will be very happy with this if she can get her way through. And she's right all over the back of the car as we go defensive into Westfield. Not going to make that move this time. We're side by side, still a bit of an overlap as we go down Dingledell into Sheen. Are we going to stay alongside? Yes, we are. And the move's done. Yes, Sedera's backed out, thinking I don't fancy going side by side through Sheen Corner, which is probably a wise thing to do. Yeah, no, that's sensible driving by Vic, because Sarah was alongside, and all you're going to do is compromise the next corner and risk popping yourself off into the gravel trap there on the exit of Sheen Curve. Back towards 3rd and 4th place. Now, we saw Perry Darling get very close last time through. He's a little bit further adrift this time as they head through Paddock Hill Bend, so understandably he just sits behind the 3rd place car in the hands of Mike Thompson. This pair now fighting over the final podium spot, would you believe, are 14.25 seconds adrift of the leading pair. Wow, that's some serious pace by Lovell and Andrew up at the front, because as we've seen actually in the last lap. Lovell set the fastest lap of the race, and also has gone faster even with with an overall best sector 1, so slightly extending that gap. It was only 3/10 at the line though, so still not a comfortable margin of lead at the moment.
No, not at all. For what is the lead of the race, are we going to see Tom Andrew squeeze his way through? Bit of almost an action replay of what happened a few laps ago, where again he was almost alongside but just couldn't do it. You have to be fully alongside, don't you, at Hawthorn? You can't be even half a car length back.
Yeah, it's not really a braking zone. I don't even know whether these cars will go down a gear there. You probably rub the brakes just to get the weight on the nose and then roll it at the speed in. And in apex speed, we're well over 100 miles an hour there, so not somewhere you want to be making contact or going side by side unless you can really help it. And as you mentioned, you want to be completely alongside by then. But Lovell doing an excellent job of defending, but it does seem like Andrew has good pace in sort of Graham Hill bend, and then clearly out of Surtees getting a very solid exit, because it's 2 laps in a row now, or 2 laps in the last 3 that he's challenged into Hawthorns, but not quite managing to get the move done. Maybe next time round.
Well, Jonathan Lovell on the previous lap, new fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 44.092, but was only a whisker of a second quicker than Tom Andrew, who again is looking to close up. You could see almost an offensive approach towards Paddock Hill Bend, but a wiggle mid-corner. Is this the opportunity for Tom Andrew?
You could see the hands in the car there, going left and right, trying to catch the car, but now the number 7 of Andrew up the inside into Druids. This is the best opportunity he's had so far. Lovell goes a little deep, but looking for the cutback. I don't think it's quite done yet. Andrew's going to have to go defensive for Graham Hill. Does ever so slightly, but that will hamper his exit. Lovell going to look for a cutback and has got an overlap going into Surtees. This is going to go on for the rest of the lap potentially.
It's very tight as they head up towards Surtees, and yeah, I think John Lovell realised that the gap was ever closing, so maybe just back out again and avoid the contact and try and get a better run coming out of Surtees as they then build the speed again down through Pilgrim's Drop and Hawthorne Hill. They will go. There's a little bit of traffic potentially just up the road as well that they need to deal with before too much longer, and I think that will be, I was going to say Zoe Carl-Henny, but I don't think it is. I think it might be the number 24 car potentially that will be the car that they'll meet, which is Sarah Wood. And they're going to meet that car slap bang in the middle of Westfield. Does she get out of the way? She tried as much as she could, but have we got the overlap on the exit? Oh no!
Contact on the exit. I saw that Lovell was going for a cutback as Andrew was compromised on the entry, and clearly Andrew then tried to, I don't know, keep tight, or maybe Lovell misjudged the exit. We didn't see the contact itself, but unfortunately that has meant that the fight for the lead for Andrew is gone, and Lovell will probably maintain the lead. But such is the gap between the top 2 and 3rd and 4th place battle that even after the spin, he's still going to have a decent and safe gap to come home in 2nd place, assuming all is well with the car after that incident.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at both cars, and you usually look for either a little telltale sign of some contact, but there's nothing at all. It must have been just the lightest of touches, but when you're a driver and you're on the very edge of adhesion anyway, all you need is just that tiny touch, and it's just enough to unbalance the car.
Yeah, almost, you know, as little amount of force as you pushing your hand on the car can often unsettle it enough, especially around Westfield, where the circuit is not only dropping away from you, but it's also off camber, and these cars with the rear or mid to rear engine, it just takes a little bit of something to unsettle the car, and you're going to go round. Yeah,
so such a shame that has interrupted otherwise what was a brilliant battle. So instead we'll concentrate on the battle for the final podium spot as well. Mike Thompson and Perry Darling are still at it. They can't quite decide as to who's going to pick up the final pot of the day or not. Now, Mike Thompson finished 3rd in the race earlier on today. Perry Darling lost all of that pace that we were talking about towards the tail end of the race, and he finished in 5th position, but it certainly looks as though he's not suffering the same amount of drop-off in this race.
No, looking like he's got some strong pace at the moment, with only 40 seconds left on the clock, so this potentially will be the last lap of the race. But yeah, any chances to make an overtake must be done very soon, otherwise you will run out of time. And let's have a look at this battle. Always side by. Oh no, it's right. It's back marker getting excited there.
It was. Yeah,
Sarah, you can see the blue flags.
Sarah Wood staying out of harm's way, but by the time they get towards Hawthorne Bend, Perry Darling is right back on the coattails of Mike Thompson again. So the battle is certainly on. Now Perry Darling weaves one way down the Derek Minter straight, weaves the other, but sits back behind again Mike Thompson as they thread their way down through Dingle Dale. He's not going to get the overlap there, so he can't do anything at Sheen Curve. And the race leader will be on his way to the checker flag and victory.
Yep, it'll be an excellent victory for Jonathan Lovell, a 2nd of the weekend, 3rd of the season, winning 3/4 of the races, 75% of the races so far. he'll be very, very happy with that, especially considering, again, we've mentioned it a number of times, but still on his novice cross, flashing the lights to show the appreciation to the team. But this battle is not done.
No, it's not. Mike Thompson desperately trying to cling on to the final podium spot. Perry Darling just needs to try and get some sort of momentum coming out of the corner, but he hasn't really got the run on the car ahead. So it's going to be Jonathan Lovell that claims the win. That's the last 3 on the bounce for him. Tom Andrew finishes in 2nd place. Mike Thompson, a double podium for him as he finished in 3rd in the race earlier on today. And it looks as though Sarah Thompson isn't done as yet. She's now trying to see if she can squeeze another place, and she has, up the inside of Ashley White, and that's going to put her into 5th position, Sarah Thompson. So brilliant drive from her, just kept picking the cars off rather effortlessly.
Yep.
She comes through to finish in 6th, with Ashley White finishing in 7th, and Vic Sedira, outside of the top 6, the man who finished 2nd in the race earlier on, he finishes in 7th.
Yeah, it didn't show the same pace in that race that he had earlier on, so potentially not feeling quite as comfortable in the car, or maybe even just having lost the momentum from the start, it just wasn't going his way. But no, a great race, and we still got some close fights down the field.
Yeah, it's Jessica Wilkinson coming over the start-finish line, but right with her was also Zoe Kyle-Henny as well. And I think there's just one more car potentially to take the checker flag, which will be Paul Watson. But other than that, I think they are all safely through, and they will head back to the paddock area, chat over the finer points of the race, including whatever it was that happened between Jonathan Lovell and Tom Andrew, and they will bring the cars back out onto track, Anglesey on the coastal circuit over the course of the 20th and 21st of May. So that is our racing done for this weekend here at Brands Hatch for the Woods Food Services Porsche Club Championship Boxster Cup, to give it its full title. And once we get every car through, we should be able to confirm the results for you for race number 2 of the Boxster Cup. So it was a win for Jonathan Lovell, with Tom Andrew finishing in 2nd place, 5 seconds adrift after that spin with whatever happened between the pair of them. Mike Thompson came through to finish in 3rd place again, with Perry Darling there in 4th. Sarah Thompson grabbed 5th at the final corner and demoted Ashley White down into 6th position. It was Vic Sedira that finished in 7th position. Scott Adams was there in 8th place. Eric Bridges was 9th, and completing the top 10 was Jessica Wilkinson. And then in 11th place, that's where we see Zoe Kyle-Henny, who finished in 11th place. 12th place went the way of Paul Watson. He was a lap adrift, as was Sarah Wood, who finished in 13th place. And we know of the whereabouts back in the pit lane following what happened at the start of Faye Noble Evans, who was a non-finisher. So that's it from Brands Hatch for the Wood Food Services Porsche Club Motorsport Boxster Cup. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, goodbye.